forth their information and knowledge and research. It's also an opportunity for people who are a little less experienced to do so. So in this survey, there's a place for comments. And if there's a theme or a topic that you guys are interested in hearing about or speaking about, please let us know. We follow your feedback very closely. So thank you for that. So we have, before we get started, I think I'll just go over the agenda for today. So I'm doing a brief welcome, and then Dean Harrison, who's here, maybe a little wave. We'll give some words of introduction, and then our speakers will take it away. And before we start, I just want to be sure to thank a few key players. First of all, I want to thank Dean Harrison again because she is the director of the CUNY Institute for Health Equity, as well as the dean for the School of, well, HS2N. It's a very complicated name, the related school. And she's a wonderful sponsor and partner in these events. So thank you for that. I also want to give a big thank you to June Towns, whose idea it was initially to move the symposium online in order to be able to open up our participation. And that's been very successful. So, big thank you to June for that, who also manages all of our tech and guides us in so many ways. June, a little wave since you're there. Also, Charlie Chung, I was talking with him earlier. He's our administrative coordinator. He's doing all the admits right now, so I'm not even going to ask him to wave because we want him to remain so focused. Also, our communications department, which I think I saw Rich Relkin for a second there, but I also want to thank members of his staff, including Erica and Hope, who developed our flyer. It's a beautiful flyer. We love it. Thank you, communications department, generally speaking, for all that you do. I also want to thank, well, there are many people. We'll thank a little more at the end, but basically, I feel like those are kind of some key partners. Also, Jonathan Rose from the dean's office, who helps us with all kinds of administrative and other so much more that I don't even know where to begin with him. But all right, so I think that with those words, today we're revisiting the theme of nutrition and the life course. Today's theme is particularly focused on nourishing the aging brain. And we're going to be looking at this through two different lenses of scholars who are doing current and very recent research on the topic, as well as our community partner. And we'll let Dean Harrison make her remarks, and then Dr. Kate Burt, who was a speaker for us last time. Kate, little wave maybe. There she is. We'll be introducing some of our partners, and she will be becoming I guess, the coordinator of the symposium going forward. So thank you, Kate, for taking that on. We really look forward to it. And I'm going to silence myself and invite Dr. Harrison, Dr. Dean Harrison, to speak.
Thank you so much, Justine. This is really wonderful. I want to, on behalf of the president of our college, Dr. Delgado, and our provost, I did mention that to them this morning in the cabinet meeting that we were going to have this symposium. Um, as Dr. McGovern says, I'm Gloria Harrison. I'm the dean for the School of Health Science, Human Services, and Nursing, and so I do bring you greetings, even if it's virtually, and we welcome you to this symposium on healthy aging. And so, of course, on behalf of HS2N, you can shorten it by saying HS2N, Department of Health Promotion and Nutrition Sciences, and the CUNY Institute for Health Equity. We are so happy to present this second part of the symposium, Healthy Aging Today. And this webinar is entitled Nutrition and the Life Course, focusing on nourishing the aging brain. I'm particularly interested in that since yesterday was my birthday, and I really wanted to hear more about, nourishing the aging brain because I fall right in that category. And from our very own Xiomara Bryan and Dr. Andrea Plunkett, I'm so pleased to be here to kind of to hear their area of expertise. And of course, then we were going to hear Nourishing the Aging Brain from the psychosocial perspective. And so I'm so happy to welcome our partner. Robin Tucker Brandon. I had to remind myself to say that name correctly. And we welcome all of the members that have joined us here today. We know that brain health has been a timely topic, and in many of us that have worked with older adults in our research area on the multi-state. It's really been a big focus of ours over the last couple of years. It's a timely topic. We've given a lot of thought to older adults in the U.S. that are suffering from cognitive decline, and so we certainly welcome any kind of advice that you might have to us on how to maintain our brain health and to improve our overall cognitive functioning, health, and well-being. So without any more, I will turn it over to whoever's introducing our guests today, and we'll let the speakers take it away.
I just want to say thank you, Gloria, that our provost signed on.
Oh,
Provost
good.
Silberman, would you like to
No,
wave a little bit? And it was
no.
perfect timing because it was just when you told us about your birthday. Happy birthday, oh Gloria. Many,
Thank
many
you.
more. We're happy to share. We're happy to share the moment with you. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Pleasure to be
Happy
here. Thank you, Justine. It's I think this is the second time I participate, right? The first one we did in person, if I recall correctly. But I'm really, really delighted to see we have about 50 participants this time around, and that this session is being recorded because I think this is such important information that could be leveraged in the future for not only our faculty but our students as well. So really congratulate the entire team who put this together. And I'm going to stay for a little bit. I have to go to another event, but I will stay for a few minutes. So thank you for the invitation. And Gloria, you look great for 40. So you're doing something amazing. So
I've made a milestone. This is my 70th year. So,
yes. Doesn't
yeah,
doesn't
so
look doesn't look 70, doesn't she? Not at all. Not at all.
yeah,
Must be the good treatment we give her here,
it must
women.
be, must be. This must be.
Anyway,
All
take it
right.
well,
take
Well,
it
thank
away.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining today, and happy birthday, Dean Harrison.
Thank you.
Um, it's a real pleasure to introduce today's speakers for me. I've had the chance to work closely with them, and I'm continually inspired by their thoughtfulness, their leadership, and the care that they bring to their work. So I'm really excited to hear from them today, and very happy to introduce them now. So our first of the two speakers that I'll be introducing is Dr. Andrea Plunkett, who's a registered dietitian nutritionist, the program director for the didactic program in dietetics, and a doctoral lecturer in the health promotion and nutrition science department. She teaches courses in medical nutrition therapy and human nutrition. Dr. Plunkett holds a doctorate in health sciences with dual concentrations in health education and clinical nutrition. As an expert nutrition practitioner for over 15 years, Dr. Plunkett has an extensive background as a clinical and community dietitian and has worked in various areas of nutrition, including ambulatory care, acute care, subacute rehabilitation, long-term care, home care nutrition, school nutrition, and as a contract registered dietitian surveyor, complaint investigator for the New York State Department of Health in the nursing home program. We are so thrilled to bring her extensive experience here today. Our second speaker is Xiomara Bryan. She's a college laboratory technician in the Department of Health Promotion and Nutrition Sciences here at Lehman, and she's a master's student in cognitive neuroscience at the CUNY Graduate Center. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Dietetics, Foods, and Nutrition. Her current research focuses on the relationship between diet and cognitive functioning, with particular emphasis on attention across three dietary patterns: the standard American diet, vegan diets, and the Mediterranean diet. So with that, I'm really delighted to welcome you both. Thank you for being here and for sharing your work with us today, and I will turn it over to you.
Beautiful. Okay, so I will be starting this presentation. Thank you so much for the warm welcomes today. Um, because we're a little bit constricted on time, I'm going to jump straight into it. So, I'm very excited to talk about nourishing the aging brain. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. So let's move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so before getting into the details, I want to just briefly outline what we're going to be talking about today. So first, we're going to discuss the physical and chemical changes that are actually happening in the brain throughout cognitive decline. So this is going to look like slower processing speeds or some mild memory issues. We're not going to touch upon any, neurodegenerative diseases. That can be an entirely different talk. And then we're going to explore the connection between our digestive system and the brain, right? So also known as the brain-gut axis. So this involves kind of understanding how our microbiome, immune signaling, and our nervous system actually communicates with the brain and how inflammation in the gut is going to influence neuronal health, negatively so. And then finally, we're going to examine dietary patterns that have been associated with healthy brain function. So we're not going to focus on specific nutrients, but we're going to just kind of look at the diets or foods that have been associated with reduced inflammation and potentially, greater cognitive resilience. That's the goal. We want cognitive resilience throughout our lifetime. Okay, next slide. Okay, so with that being said, I just want to start with a question. You don't have to answer this out loud, but just think about it. How many of you here have experienced walking into a room and then completely forgetting why you went in there in the first place? Or there was a word on the tip of your tongue that you couldn't seem to remember, and then all of a sudden it comes to you and you're like, how could I have forgotten that? It seems so obvious in retrospect, right? So these little brain glitches are completely normal and they do happen at any age. I don't want anyone here thinking like they're experiencing accelerated cognitive decline because this is happening. That's not what's happening. It's normal. But as we get older, we will experience them a bit more frequently. And it does remind us that our cognition changes throughout our lifetime, right? And this matters a lot because in the last decade, the older adult population in the United States has increased by almost 40%. And it's a wonderful thing that we're increasing our lifespan, we're living much longer, but we also want to focus on increasing our health span, right? So if you're not familiar with the term, health span essentially just means how long we remain free of diseases that rob us of our autonomy throughout our lifetime. And we've known for quite some time that nutrition and exercise impact our health in the long term, but historically, a lot of the literature has underemphasized the brain. And thankfully, with advancements in technology and neuroimaging tools, we can finally visualize these changes and understand how, various lifestyle factors are going to either promote healthy brain aging or contribute to cognitive decline. So what do we mean by cognitive decline? So we're just talking about the physical and chemical changes that are happening in the brain that are going to impact our memory, attention, processing speed, and executive functioning. So this is non-disabling. Like I said, we're not talking about neurodegenerative diseases, just regular cognitive decline. Okay, so let's move on to the next image, one of my favorites. Okay, so here we're looking at two brain scans of two different individuals. On the left-hand side, we have a brain scan of a young adult, and on the right-hand side, we have the brain scan of an older adult. Now, even to the untrained eye, two things should stand out specifically and right away. In image B on the right-hand side, you will see that there's a gap on top of the brain, right? So so the brain is actually shrinking, right? You are losing, that cortical layer is becoming much thinner. You're also seeing in the very middle that butterfly shape. So that is known, those are the ventricles. And that's also widening when you're comparing it to the younger brain, right? And you're also seeing like the grooves are much bigger. Those gaps are much bigger in the brain. So this is completely normal and this is happening gradually throughout the lifespan. This is not happening, within days or weeks. This is happening over decades, over time, and this is completely normal. So let's go on to the next image. Okay, so this is one of my favorite images, right? It's amazing. So I want to bring up the topic of the brain age gap because I think it's very important in context right now. So an emerging concept in brain aging science right now is the idea of the brain age gap. So using different neuroimaging techniques, we've been able to actually train computer models, machine learning, to basically estimate individuals' brain age based on different cortical structures, cortical thickness, white matter integrity, gray matter integrity, all these things. And the brain age gap is essentially the difference between the person's actual age and then their predicted brain age. Now, I want everyone to kind of focus on the left-hand side where it says negative younger brain, it can be a little misleading because having a negative brain age gap is actually a really good thing, right? So this person is technically 66 years old, right? Chronologically, they're 66 years old, but they have the brain age of someone who is 57 years old. So this individual is absolutely adhering to certain dietary guidelines. And then if we look at the center, this individual, their brain age is the same as their chronological age, also great. But if we move on over all the way to the right-hand side with the positive brain age gap, this is where we start to see significant problems. So this person is 67 years old, but they have a brain age of someone who is 75 years old. And you can see that there's a widening of the ventricles. You're also seeing brain atrophy. You're seeing the widening of those gaps on the brain surface, right? And this is basically showing that something's happening here. Maybe they haven't been adhering to certain lifestyle factors that's causing this accelerated brain aging, right? And you can have accelerated brain aging without it being neurodegenerative. So let's not freak out. These are things that usually you can implement certain interventions and kind of treat it before it gets any worse. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So I've mentioned, the physical changes that are happening in the brain, and we've been finally able to visualize these changes. But some of you may be wondering, okay, that's nice, but like what's causing these physical changes? What's leading up to it? So a few things are happening here. So we have reduced synaptic density affecting memory and attention networks. So as we age, the number of connections between our neurons, known as synapses, start to slowly decrease. And you can think of them as like little communication bridges between the neurons. And essentially, if we have fewer of these bridges, of course, communication is going to become way less efficient. And it's also going to make things like memory recall a bit slower. And also, it's going to make our like focus and attention feel a lot more effortful. We also have altered neurotransmitter signaling. So neurons communicate with these chemical messengers known as neurotransmitters. And two really important ones for cognition is acetylcholine, which is going to help support our memory. And then we also have dopamine, which is going to help with our motivation and attention. As we age, we're not producing as many of these neurotransmitters as we once did when we were younger, which is going to clearly affect, how quickly the brain is processing information. And then we also have increased oxidative stress, right? We know that our brain, that our cells produce energy, and they also produce these small byproducts known as free radicals, right? And we know that free radicals, when they accumulate in the brain, they cause oxidative damage. And over time, this is going to damage these neurons. It's going to make them a lot less efficient. We also have low-grade inflammation that's happening in the brain. So our brain has its own little immune cells, and they're called microglia, right? Over time, they become a bit dramatic and they start to become slightly overactive. And instead of just responding to injury when appropriate, they're starting to just like stay in this low level activated state. And that's causing this mild inflammation in the brain, which is, of course, interfering with communication between the neurons. And then finally, we have mitochondrial dysfunction. So we know that mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cells that's been drilled into our brains, and they generate the energy that our neurons need to function, right? As we age, our mitochondria become a bit less efficient, and this means that our brain cells, our neurons, they're not getting the energy as effectively as they once did, which is going to absolutely slow down how quickly and efficiently, the brain works. So all of these cellular and chemical changes I just talked about are what is causing the actual physical changes that we're visualizing in those MRI brain scans. So now that we have a better understanding of basically how cognitive decline presents itself in the brain, I'm going to pass this on over to Dr. Plunkett to get into the really exciting part, which is the gut-brain axis. So take it away. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Xiomara, for all that information, and thank you, Dr. Bird, for the warm introduction. So my portion of this next slide, my portion of this presentation will highlight the gut-brain connection and its impact on overall well-being. So the brain and the digestive tract are always talking to each other. It's like when we're texting messages to, back and forth to our friends or our families or our colleagues. So the brain and the gut, they work like that. The brain and the digestive tract send signals back and forth through metabolic processes or pathways or signals. So this two-way communication is known as the gut-brain axis. The vagus nerve, so this special nerve, um, serves as the main communication pathway between the gut and the brain. Next slide, please. The gut is often referred to as the second brain. So in the gut, there are billions of tiny microbes live in our gut or our colon or the large intestine. These microbes help with digestion. So by fermenting fiber, which serves as the primary food for the microbes help to make important chemicals like Xiomara mentioned, neurotransmitter or brain chemicals. The chemical signals from the gut influence nerve function and brain activity. The gut-generated chemical signals help those messages help to regulate our mood, emotions, sleep, and overall behavior. So the gut can affect our mental well-being, and the brain can affect how the gut works. So here's an example. So before an interview or an exam or this presentation, you may develop feelings of nervousness or anxiety. Your brain senses this heightened level of stress, right? So nerve signals are activated, and those signals are transmitted through the vagus nerve to the gut. This is because the brain sends signals to the digestive tract. You may feel like butterflies in your stomach, or cramps or aches or stomach discomfort or cramping or gassing or even the urgency to use the bathroom. So if the gut has healthy bacteria or microbes, the gut can send calming signals back to the brain to help the person feel more relaxed and more focused, right? There are other factors that can affect gut health. So chronic stress, inadequate sleep patterns, poor dietary patterns, nutrient deficiencies, inflammation can change the gut environment and disrupt the function of these chemical messages back and forth from the gut to the brain. So disruption in the gut bacteria or the microbiome can slow how food moves through the digestive tract. So there's also slow motility, so movement of food through the digestive tract, causing symptoms like bloating, issues with constipation, and also increased sensitivity in the digestive tract. So this condition is pretty much known as dysbiosis. So these changes can affect gut health and also our mental well-being. So when the gut microbiome is balanced, digestion works more smoothly. There's efficient absorption of nutrients and mental well-being, such as our mood and anxiety, will improve. Next slide. So this raises an important question. How can you help nourish your gut microbes and support your gut microbiome? So nutrition plays a vital role in regulation of the gut microbiome and supporting healthy brain function. So let's examine the MIND diet. So we take a look at the MIND diet. So MIND means, or the acronym for MIND is Mediterranean dash intervention for neurodegenerative delay. The MIND diet combines elements or key elements from the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet patterns. The DASH diet stands for Dietary Approach to Stop Hypertension, a meal plan that was originally intended to lower high blood pressure. So the MIND diet focuses on healthy brain foods that reduce inflammation and oxidative stress. Xiomara mentioned oxidative stress and how those affect the neurons and chemicals from the brain. Inflammation, oxidative stress. The MIND diet emphasizes plant-based foods, so more plant-based food limits animal products and high saturated fat. So some of these foods on the Mind Diet, whole grain, like brown rice and quinoa and wild rice and berries, to name a few. Vegetables, leafy greens, nuts, beans, legumes, berries. Oh, I love this one. Berries are loaded like blackberries and blueberries. They're loaded with polyphenols, a component, and it has like antioxidants. So antioxidants reduce inflammation in the brain, in intestinal cells, and also support cognitive health. So the Mind Diet emphasizes protein foods. So lean meat, proteins are converted to amino acids. Amino acids like tryptophan, which is like the main amino acid that is responsible to support neurotransmitter functions. So like your lean meat, chicken, poultry, to name a few. Plant sources like pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, oat, quinoa, and the list goes on. So the Mind Diet also emphasizes omega-3 fatty acids. So to reduce inflammation, so your fatty fish, salmon, mackerel, plant sources like nuts and seeds and flax seeds and chia, to name a few. It emphasizes olive oil. The Mind Diet also emphasizes foods that are rich in fiber, so prebiotics. So you get that from your quinoa, your flax seeds, whole grains, fermented foods, and fruits and vegetables. So next slide, please. Now, there are foods that could disrupt the gut microbiome and the gut-brain axis. So one of that is the Standard American Diet, which stands for acronym SAD. The Standard American Diet emphasizes high-calorie foods, highly processed foods, high in saturated fats like fried foods, fast foods, sweetened beverages, excessive sweetened beverages, low fruits and vegetables, so ultimately low in fiber. Which can actually impact our health. If we eat these type of foods like consistently over time, these will impact both neurotransmitter functions and also brain health and our gut microbiome. So next slide, please. So the takeaway from this presentation, this brief presentation about the gut-brain axis and the connection between diet and health, is that cognitive decline is a normal part of aging, and it has become a growing public health concern. So as the brain ages, both memory, thinking skills, or ability slow down. Inflammation and oxidative stress increase brain age, right? And then also that we are more vulnerable to nutrient deficiencies. There are other factors that may impact cognitive decline, such as genetics, lifestyle, chronic diseases. So the gut-brain axis as well, connection between the gut and the brain. So we want to help those chemical messages to work properly. So nutrition can reduce those effects by starting with our diet. So diet is one of the most or ineffective modifiable risk factor that can improve as we age. So the Mind Diet once again emphasizes and supports brain health by reducing inflammation, slowing cognitive decline, enhancing neurotransmitter functions, and help to maintain a healthy gut microbiome. So the takeaway message is that eating a healthy diet pattern, brain focus is a practical and effective way to nourish the aging brain and improve cognitive health as we get older. Thank you for listening, and we'll turn it over to our next speaker.
Thank you very much, you two. That was both like content rich, a little bit calming. I felt sort of like, okay, I'm gonna hang in there. Also, though, I'm starving now. This is the lunch hour, but I'm gonna go have a lot of berries. And I did forget to mention something, so I really need those berries. Which is that people who have questions, please put them in the chat. We will reserve some time at the end to manage questions. So that's that. And now I want us to move over to the second portion of the talk, where we invite Robin Tucker Brandon to join us. So, Robin is a social worker, and as I may or may not have mentioned, we are trying to make this symposium as interdisciplinary as possible. She works a lot with older adults, and here is her formal bio. Also, she's a connection that was brought to us by Dr. Plunkett. And so just a reminder that if your work world brings you in touch with interesting people who are doing interesting work, we're of course very happy to engage everybody that we can in this series. So Robin Tucker Brandon is a licensed clinical social worker with over 30 years of experience providing therapeutic services to individuals with a focus on the aging population. Robin received a bachelor's degree in social work from Herbert H. Lehman College, so that's always exciting, and a master's of social work degree from Silberman School of Social Work at Hunter College, also CUNY, so we're okay with that. Robin's professional experience includes her prior position as a licensed clinical medical social worker at Beth Abraham Center for Rehabilitation and Nursing. For 24 years, she provided clinical care and treatments to residents with highly complex health and mental health diagnoses. Robin's extensive experience in healthcare has allowed her to address systemic challenges facing the aging population while working towards enhancing the quality of life for older adults through compassion, education, crisis intervention, and case management. She continues to be an adjunct lecturer. She has taught at Silberman and also at Boston College. She has a long history of dedication and commitment to improving the lives of those who need it most. Robin, the floor is yours. And thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I didn't even know that was me, but I appreciate that. Thank you. So I'd like to start by addressing the issues from a psychosocial perspective. Again, this presentation is focusing on nourishing the aging brain from a psychosocial perspective. Next slide, please. So the objective of this presentation is to define a psychosocial perspective in aging, to identify psychosocial factors impacting older adult nutrition, and to examine the social worker's role in addressing nutrition-related concerns, as well as applying theory to practice using case analysis. Next slide, please. The psychosocial perspective, what is that? In the psychosocial perspective, we look at the individual, in this case presentation, the aging, the older adult, from a holistic point of view. We're looking at the individual in totality, not in a silo, and not just based on their symptoms or their diagnosis, but how their environment, relationship, culture help form and shape the person, who they are, and in this case, their relationship towards food. Next slide, please. Back. Can you go back? Okay. So some psychosocial factors include mental health. Older adults have the highest rate of depression and anxiety. Many of the depression and anxiety is brought on due to the many losses that they experience. We know as we get older, our community gets smaller and smaller due to the fact that we lose friends and we lose family. And that could be due to death, or it could just be due to relocation. And then also anxiety. As we get older, we find out many older individuals become very anxious, and that can affect their relationship with food in terms of ability to trust the caretaker that is providing the food for us, or the person that is actually preparing the food as well. And when we speak again about depression, how does that impact us and the older adult and their relationship to food? How does that put the older adult at risk? Because when a person exhibits depressive symptoms, that can play out in them feeling fatigued, feeling tired, not having the motivation to want to eat, to want to prepare food, or even having any interest in food at all. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to present to you a case study. And as I'm reading this case study, I want you to think about the risk factors that you notice within this study. We have Anne, who is an 84-year-old African-American female with a diagnosis of CVA, which is a stroke, and mild dementia. Anne has 2 children and lives alone. Anne's children noticed a significant decline in her health and mobility. Anne eventually is admitted to a long-term care facility. Within that facility, staff has observed that Anne had been sleeping for extended hours and skipping meals, leading to a significant loss in weight. So as what was mentioned, I did work in a long-term care facility, and this is not far removed from many of the residents that we experienced who was just removed from their home for multiple reasons and then placed in a new environment away from family and friends, unfamiliar surroundings, and then present with just no desire or pleasure in just engaging in life itself. And part of that is no interest in eating. And so we noticed that some residents, lose a significant amount of weight because they just have no drive or desire for eating. Next slide, please. So here we go, the social worker, right? And it is Social Work Month, just to throw that out there. I didn't put it in the slide, but we have the social worker. We're going to speak of interventions. So the social worker goes in and conducts a mood assessment, which indicates Anne was deeply depressed. A referral was made to medical where Anne was prescribed an appetite stimulant and a mood enhancer. Because what we want to do here is open up that appetite, right? But we know before we can do that, we have to address the triggering factors, the crisis which Anne was removed from her home, away from family and friends, and also in a new unfamiliar environment. So ongoing psychotherapy was also ordered to assist Anne with adjusting to placement and significant losses. So we will continue to monitor Anne to see if the mood stimulant is helping, to see if her appetite opens up, and most likely maybe put her on weekly weights so we can see that increase. And hopefully Anne's relationship with food based on her mood will become one where she will begin to gain weight. Next slide, please. Cognitive factors contributing to eating disorders. As what was discussed by my colleagues, cognitive decline, diagnosis of dementia. There's all kinds of dementia. We can have Alzheimer's dementia, vascular dementia. But again, we're looking at how the brain is reacting to the individual's relationship with food, the older adult, as I should say. We experience memory loss, mood or behavioral issues, negative food emotions, which is key. And the impact, needing reminders to eat and drink. As our older adults age and they present with cognitive impairments or cognitive issues, they may need that reminding to eat. And you have some residents that, it's a challenge because they felt that they already eaten and they hadn't. So you just have to kind of gently, encourage them to eat, even if it's a snack, even if it's something small, that they will be able to just not skip a meal, but to have something to eat. Then you have the opposite, where you have, the older adult who forgot that they have eaten. And so they continuously may want to eat, breakfast. They didn't eat breakfast, so they want another tray. So you have to work around that because you don't want them to, again, gain too much weight or, again, have, be in a position that puts them at risk. So now we have changes in taste and smell. I don't know about you, but when I see food, I first eat with my eyes, then the smell, and then, of course, the taste. So as older adults, as people age, they lose those senses. So eating becomes less pleasurable. Can you imagine not being able to taste or smell your food? So what we like to do, and I know I'll probably be frowned about this, but I'm going to say natural sweeteners. We like to then add a little bit of sweetener. It could be to their water, it could be to sprinkle to their food, or even savory foods that they can taste. So to make the whole experience, more pleasurable. And then we have, situations where older adults may not recall their food preferences. So you go to them and you say, Miss Jones, what would you like to eat? Oh, I don't know. I don't remember what I used to like. So it would be helpful if you could sort of help them to create a menu to identify or maybe reintroduce foods that they've forgotten that they may like. Enlist the help of family members or friends that kind of can remember exactly what foods that the individual liked at one particular point in time. And then also steps in preparing food. Now we have all these different diets, but we have to remember that a person that's experiencing cognitive decline may not remember all of the different recipes or how to prepare certain foods. So we want to keep it simple and maybe even offer food that's already prepackaged or prepared. And then we have going to the grocery store. We talked about cognitive decline. I don't know about you. Sometimes I enter the grocery store and I'm thinking about what is it that I want to get from the store. And the same thing happens with older adults. Because remember, cognitive decline doesn't happen quickly. It happens over a period of time. It can happen. So the individuals, you may say, this is the diet you need to be on. You need to, buy fresh berries and vegetables. They get in the store, they may not remember. So again, we have to take that into consideration in terms of where they are, in terms of their cognitive decline. Not able to comprehend or remember issues around food safety. So not wanting to use the stove in fear that they may keep the fire on. So that's one thing. So again, if we're, recommending certain, diets or foods, we have to keep in mind if the individual is living alone, can they get prepackaged food? Is there a service that can deliver them food if they're afraid to either use their stove, or some of them may not even have a microwave, at this point. So we have to take all of that into consideration. And I kind of touched on dehydration, meaning that older adults have a high risk of being dehydrated. So if you would like, natural sweetness, I'm going to say, it's all about quality of life at this time, right? It's all about quality of life. So if you can put some natural sweeteners in the water, or even watermelon, or any type of fruit that's high, and that can hydrate them, that would be helpful. And then difficulty swallowing. With changes in the brain and cognitive decline, we have situations where an older adult's, food may change in terms of them being on regular food consistency or chopped diet. So this comes with education if the person still lives in the community with family, so that they know how to prepare the food, so that they're not giving them a texture that can cause them to choke, or swallow while they're swallowing. And also, to be able to remind the older adult that this is the texture of food that they need to stay within. I know the other food seems tempting, but the risk that would be involved should they not adhere. Next slide, please. So we have loss of independence. Again, as we get older, older adults experience many losses, but let's talk about the loss of independence a little bit deeply. When you're dealing with older adults, especially those from different cultures, it may be difficult to accept assistance. Even when we know that they can benefit either from being in a long-term care facility or having a caregiver, work with them. So that would be, a challenge to allow them to see that they may need help, because you also want to maintain their level of autonomy. For instance, if you have an older adult who may have a diagnosis of Parkinson and may have difficulty with their fine motor skills eating, maybe getting dietary involved and maybe an adaptive device that can help them where they're not being spoon-fed. So that could be, and, a benefit for them as well. Also, getting to the market. So when we talk about fresh foods and vegetables, many of our older adults that we come in contact with live in communities that do not have specialized grocery stores, farmers markets, and it may take a while for them to get to those places. And that could be through transportation, which they may lack, or it could be a caregiver to drive them, which they may not have all the time. So we have to take that in consideration. And what is the impact? They end up eating, fast food or food that is not healthy and nutritious, putting them again at risk. Next slide, please. Social isolation and loneliness. So as individual age, I told you about the circle getting smaller and smaller. And we know eating is a social activity, and what our community supports can reduce the pleasure in eating. Let's think about us from when we were growing up. We've had the opportunity, many of us, to eat with family and friends, and this could be celebratory, holidays, birthdays. And it's not just about the food, it's about the fellowshipping, it's about the connection. And as older adults lose that, then they also lose their desire and their will to want to eat. It could even be that older adult that used to like preparing food for the family, right? And then they no longer have that. Children moved away, grandchildren are no longer there. So again, their drive and desire is no longer there to be able to get up and eat and, and socialize. Even in long-term care facilities, we encourage the residents not to eat in their room, but to eat in the common areas around others. But that could be tricky too, because certain older individuals, if they're experiencing tremors or difficulty eating, if they need dentures, they may be somewhat embarrassed to eat around others. So we have to assess again the person, look at the person in totality, their individual situation, and see how we can best meet their needs. Next slide, please. So now we have another case study, and I want you to read this along with me and look at the risk involved. So we have Andrew, who is a 75-year-old white male who is alert and oriented ×4, and of course the fourth is situation. So Andrew is pretty much with it. Andrew lives alone and has a limited social network. Andrew recently went for an annual physical and was observed by his doctor to have a significant loss of weight. Recent tests showed no medical changes that will cause weight loss. So other than everything is good, but why is Andrew experiencing this loss in weight? Andrew reported that he used to enjoy going out to eat or preparing meals with his best friend who had recently passed. Andrew now reports not having any interest in preparing food or going out to dine. So here's the thing with Andrew, food was tied with his relationship with his friend, whether that be eating, whether it's preparing food. And think about us. We call our friends, hey, let's do brunch. We may not be hungry, but the fact about getting and connecting with our friends or family is the motivating force. So now that motivating factor was removed when Andrew's friend passed. Next slide, please. So here we go, our social worker, intervention. Due to Andrew's major loss, the social worker referred Andrew to a bereavement counselor and an adult day program to help increase his social connections and provide opportunities for Andrew to connect with others during meals and other activities. So we're looking at the person, not in a silo, but in totality, looking at their connections with the community as it's impacting their relationship with food. Next slide, please. Cultural beliefs. So demonstrating cultural humility means respecting and understanding how a person's food choices can be based on preferences and norms. So I keep going back to as a child, we're talking about older adults, but they were once a child. So as a child, you know that certain foods that we eat is tied to our culture. There were certain recipes that were passed down. I wish I would have had some of those recipes, but certain recipes that were passed down from generation to generation. There were holidays, right, where we would bring out certain foods, and all of this plays to the identity of the individual. So that's important. And we don't want to strip that from the person by imposing our foods and our values on the person who their cultural beliefs is a major part of who they are. But then I know certain, people that may work in long-term care setting, hospitals, you have to be compliant. You have to adhere to the compliance, but you also want to be able to respect the autonomy of the individual as well. So there's a balance because you want their cultural needs to be respected. Next slide, please. Food insecurity. Many older adults are on fixed incomes and may not have financial resources to afford fresh, healthy, and recommended foods. I believe I touched on this, and especially with many older adults who may live in communities that are disenfranchised, marginalized. You have to be aware and acknowledge the fact that the stores and the access that we have, they may not share that same access. So what do? You may want to try different food pantries, maybe delivery of foods, so that they can access those fresh fruits and vegetables. Limited access to fresh and nutritious foods may lead to them purchasing lower cost and less nutritious foods. Next, please, next slide. Conclusion. Psychosocial factors play an important role as it relates to nutrition with the elderly population. Nourishing the aging brain by making nutrition a psychosocial experience can benefit how aging adults view food and their willingness to eat. Thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you, Robin. We've only got a few minutes left, and I saw there was a very active chat. I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Burt, who's going to help us through this final part. If people have to leave, of course, we recognize it, but hopefully we can get to some good questions. Don't forget the survey before you leave.
And thank you, Robin, to remind us it's also National Nutrition Month as well.
Oh,
March is National Nutrition
all
Month.
right. Yes.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks to the speakers. Those presentations were great. I learned a lot there. And I have many questions myself, but I saw a number in the chat, so I won't get to my own. I will focus on those in the chat, but I'd love to follow up with all of you later. So a couple questions that I saw in the chat were, I think it would be great to hear all of your responses to them. One of them, there was some question about the quality of food and how the quality of food affects mental health, affecting depression, or somebody else was asking about the quality of food in terms of, organic, GMO specifically were some factors they were interested in. Perhaps any of our speakers could speak to quality of food and the way that it impacts mental health or cognitive decline.
So I think access to food is that's a very important factor. So as Robin mentioned in her presentation, when we assess our elderly population, we want to assess the food insecurity and identifying sources where they could get help, to get access to quality food. So in terms of mental health, my presentation talks about, low quality food that could disrupt the microbiome, which is connected to our mental health and our well-being. So the key thing is that access, I think that's a very big thing. Food insecurity, low quality food. We know people who have low income, they tend to have access to all these foods that are not so good for their health. So access is a big thing. So getting help from different sources.
Thanks. Anybody else want to weigh in on that one? Okay. Oh, please, if you'd like to, Robin.
Okay, I just wanted to also add, and I think Andrea and Xiomara and I spoke about this when we were talking about the various communities in which many older adults live in. It goes along with where the nursing homes are located too. So you have the dietitian that goes in and recommending, a certain diet, but then, we have to be creative in terms of how we introduce these foods to a point where the older adults will find interest in it. Because what happens is they end up ordering food from, as I think Andrea said, what was it? The American diet? What did you call it? The standard American diet, all food which is not good for them, high in sodium. So it goes against a lot of what we're trying to do as a treatment team, because they're not enjoying the food that's offered in the skilled nursing facilities, and they end up ordering Chinese, McDonald's, and all of these things. So this is the challenge that we face. So to be creative in terms of how we can engage them to open up their palate and their appetite, and in terms of the food that they get in these facilities, which is limited.
And then
thanks.
also, I just wanted to say that at a certain age, as a dietitian, as a clinician, you don't have restricted diet because the quality of life is what is important. So we don't want to have the weight loss and all of that. So quality of life, cultural competency, understanding your patient, understanding their food preference, their needs, that is more important at that time. My grandmother is 98 years old. She has diabetes. We're not putting her on in a restricted diet and so forth, because at that point is the quality of life that you're looking for and enjoyment.
Thank you very much. I think that's actually a great place to leave it. We all should be enjoying our food. That is of utmost importance, particularly as we age.
I'm sorry, Kate. I just see in the chat that someone said it's not so nice to say that. And I'm not saying Chinese food, but I'm saying food that's high in sodium. Not that Chinese. I enjoy Chinese food. Who was that? That was Betty Wong. I enjoy Chinese food. I'm saying food that is high in sodium. I apologize, Betty Wong. That was not my intention at all. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks again to everybody. I want truly to all of the speakers for sharing your experience and your reflections with us today. I want to thank you, Dr. McGovern, for leading us in the symposium this year. I think we've heard some wonderful speakers over the last couple of years, and I'm so grateful to be leading us forward into next year, but want to say what a huge thank you for getting the symposium to convene, folks. I think the evidence of how much it's needed and well received is right here in the room with us today. So thank you.
Thank you, Kate. That was very nice. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it is something that's near and dear to my heart for anybody who's worked with me or knows what I do. So thank you. I appreciate it. And it is one of our goals to sort of bring, more voices into these spaces so that everybody can have a chance to share, but also we can all learn from each other. So thank you, Kate, and thank you for taking the baton. And thank you all for attending. We're going to wrap it up, but not before you do the survey. June posted it in the chat, I believe. And I can see that there are a lot of comments, a lot of positive reinforcements on the stuff. And there's also, unfortunately, a lot of questions that we're not going to actually get to. But just as a lot of them are sort of practice-based questions, and there are community-based resources. If you are caring for somebody in your family who's either older and has a range of challenges maybe, or somebody who has eating issues, there are community resources for this. There's also a lot of community resources for cognitive decline. You can always go to your Alzheimer's Association chapter. Any kind of senior center is a good place to start. And if you're really concerned, of course, just call 911. That said, it is the lunch hour. I hope everybody will go and have a really healthy, yummy meal that will help you remember to tune into this space next time for our next talk. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for attending. And Kate, thank you for your kind words.
Will the slides be sent out to participants?
Yes,
June?
I will send the slides.
Thank you so much.
And I think we have a recording, isn't that right?
We have a recording.
So let's send everything out. And there were people who were asking for that anyway, people who were not able to attend. So that's a little bit of background business for us. But yes, we'll send everything out to you. And let us know what you want to hear going forward.
Thank
Sure
you.
you do the survey. Thank you.
But okay, now bye everybody, right? We're signing off. Bon appetit, as they say.
Thank you so much.
All right, I'm signing off, everybody.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
All right. Signing off.
Later.
Thank you. Thank you all.